Jim, welcome to the pod.
I was brought up in care. If you had said, what about being up in care, I'd probably give you a sort of fairly fruity mouthful of what I thought of it at the time, which you couldn't broadcast if I said today. We talk about child abuse. I mean, they just beat you and mentally cruel. It wasn't the beating so much as the the way you played with your mind. Probably the worst thing you can do is put kids into care. Live as you live, as though today's your last day. Don't sort of save it up and think that one of these days I'll start spending, because you'll get old and miserable like me and can't spend. But guess where I got this suit from? This is what my tenants left behind. Got married, and she didn't want me to get property. So this property cost me £35,000, which I agreed to buy, and that's when the marriage went sour. She walked out, which is still upsetting.
What do you wish that you knew when you were 18 years old if you're starting again?
No. So when I started up the business, I set some principles, and one of them is a no eviction policy.
What's your view on rent to rent?
Rent to rent, I always say it's from Muppets.
One of the deals I'd love for you to talk about is your biggest HMO deal. From what I remember, it was 220 beds.
Yeah. I've got about 660 tenants. Every one of them has my phone number. Phone me if you want. And someone said to me, Jim, I don't know why you keep buying properties for the future. You've got no future. Oh, thanks very much, mate.
If you were Prime Minister, how would you solve this problem?
The problem is no government has been re-elected where the price of housing has dropped. So you've got to keep property scarce. They will never provide more housing. If they could provide all these hundreds of thousands of properties, that would bring down the price of property. And they don't. We want the price of property to go up because that's how you get re-elected. I don't know what the answer is. It's a complete, utter mess.
So do you think Nigel can solve the problem? Jim, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
No, pleasure. Thank you so much for coming down. I really appreciate it. And I was thinking about before you came, I thought, you've actually impacted my life massively. So I wanted to say thank you from the outset, because your advice directly changed my cash flow on my portfolio massively in terms of commercial to residential stuff. And so I know there are a lot of people that will be watching this that you've had a big impact on their life, and you are the real deal. So I'm super excited to be hosting you today. But I just wonder if you could start by explaining to people, what is it that you've done in the property world? I mean, anyone from the property world will know who you are, but for those that don't, can you just give them a synopsis of what your portfolio looks like, what you've managed to accomplish in your investment career?
Right. I started fairly late in life. So that's probably a positive for those who think you need to start early. It'd be much, much better. If I started your age, I'd be living on a yacht, or maybe even sort of going off into space on a rocket ship, because the rewards would be so much better. No, I started in a lovely summer day in 1991. I remember it well. Actually walked to the first house I was thinking of buying. The birds were singing, the grass was green, the bushes were all bushy, and it was a terraced house that I decided I just want to get into property. I'd waited, must have been around about 50 I was at the time, and I'd wanted to get into property from an early age, from the age of 18. I had a landlord in those days who put the seeds, Mr. Schultz, a small Jewish gentleman who I rented my first property from, a bedsit in Clapham, South London. And he was moaning about property. You'll find this. All landlords moan about property. And this was, I think, 1971. And he was moaning he'd bought his previous property 7 years previously for £3,000. You can't believe it, Clapham, South London. So we had a 7 from 71. What's that take us to? 1964 for £3,000. This one cost £21,000. So the price had gone up 7 times.
And he's complaining at this point.
He was complaining, how can anyone afford property at £21,000? I went to have a look at the property a few years ago. It's now worth £1.5 million. So you're going from 71 to now, I'm not sure, that's a lot of multiple. And at that time, I was a bit odd. I was brought up in care, and I broke the mold in as much as I didn't get sent to prison or a psychiatric home. When I started to work, I always wanted to get an education, a degree, for some bizarre reason, which I look back on now and wonder why. But at the time, it seemed a great idea. That would be the pinnacle to get to. So I'd saved up all this money to go and do a degree, needed accommodation and the rest to do A-levels, because you had to have A-levels to go to university. Now you don't, but in those days you did. And it was free in those days, education, you got a grant, but you didn't get any grant to do your A-levels. So went and worked. I was in the Merchant Navy as a steward. Great job, traveling the world. I mean, for an 18-year-old, you could not think of anything better. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven, working on these ships, going around the world. I ended up as the captain's, not chef, steward, first class. That's the top waiter. And I remember looking there thinking, this is great. The food you could eat in those days, you're allowed to eat the same food as the passengers had. So you're eating first class. And I did it. And what I do, I saved every penny. I didn't go out spending it as most people did on the ship. In some ways, I wish I did. So here's a lesson. Live as you live, as though today's your last day. Don't sort of save it up and think that one of these days I'll start spending, because you'll get old and miserable like me and can't spend. You just don't. I mean, people laugh at me, but guess where I got this suit from? This is what my tenants left behind. So you just look, well, it's useful. It's there's nothing wrong with that. I like that. And you end up in that sort of a bit of a bind. So be a bit loose, live a bit better. Anyway, that gave me the idea of going into property. But I remember at the time thinking, I've saved all this money. Can you buy me a property? And I'll go back to sea and live a hedonistic lifestyle. But no. I'd have to get an education and be productive and get a proper job. Can't have it spend a life having fun. And that's what sowed it. And then along the line, left the merchant, got a degree, and thought, so what? I got a degree and started work. I went into lecturing, which I liked. Don't get me wrong, I loved lecturing. Got married, and this is the problem. You're under the cosh then. You're a partnership, and she didn't want me to get property.
Why didn't she want you to get it?
She felt that would be putting our financial future at risk. I'd love to meet her today and say, look, do you think I put our financial future at risk by doing this? No, you had to have a job, come home, put your slippers on, do a bit of gardening, all that kind of thing. So I didn't. And it just sort of built up. I saw property going up and up. And I said, I wanted to buy that property. One that stuck in mind was I'd bought our own house. I put the money into that, which was a wise investment. In the recession in the 90s, a property was going for £8,000. Within 18 months, it had gone up to 150,000. So, and that was when 150,000 was a lot of money. So you're going back in the 90s, you could almost retire on that kind of money. And I missed out on that. Why? Because she said, no, I don't want to do that. And I very much went along to eventually, I got to the point of saying, enough's enough. Went out and bought my first property, which was on that lovely sunny day back in 1991, end terrace house. I went with my accommodation officer from the college, because remember I was a college lecturer at that time. So it was easy for me to get in. Go to the college accommodation officer, what do I need to rent to students in the college? She came down and said, yeah, this will do. Took her about 90 seconds to say the property was suitable, which I thought, oh, don't you have to kick the skirting boards? Don't you have to look in the cellar? Don't you have to look at that? No, she just said, yeah, this is fine. Stick a few locks on the door, job done. That was how easy it was to do in those days, except you couldn't get finance. So this property cost me £35,000, which I agreed to buy. And that's when the marriage went sour. She walked out.
Was that a big breaking point for the marriage, or would you say it was just one of the factors at that time?
It was gradually, so looking back, you realise that it was deteriorating in some ways. Probably get into the sort of politics of, or is it the politics or the emotion of women? it was a point where I should have left well before then. The sign it was on the table, but she decided that she would leave, which is still upsetting because even though it wasn't working, it's still a big of a sort of a break. And especially she took the cats. I like the cats, and I was left catless. But never mind. Took the first property, 35 grand. Within 17 years, that property was worth 350. And if I had it today, I reckon it would be making me 45,000 a year. So that just that burning desire to get into property, looking at how prices had gone up, I reckon that if I'd bought that house in Clapham back in 1971, was it? It would earn more than I earned working. And quite, I thought at the time, reasonably paid as lecturers were. I became a senior lecturer. So I thought I was on a reasonable income. In retrospect now, it's very much different. So that's how I got started. And then people think I'm clever at doing this. What they don't realise is I've just cooked a pancake once, flipped it, and done it a few hundred times since then. It's very much the same thing, rinse and repeat, buy property. And the great thing about buying HMOs in my area at the time was the properties would get valued on income. So you take a simple example, a property that you could buy for 100K, you turn it into an HMO because you can value it on its income. This is people don't understand. They don't want to understand. They don't believe it. Can be valued on its income and it's worth 300K. You can borrow 75% of that. That means you buy a property for 100, the lenders will give you 225,000, less cost, stamp duty and all the rest of it. You have to create an HMO out of it, so it'll cost you a bit of money. But you can buy a property, get it all paid for you, cash out a chunk of money, and it still cash flows because you've got the tenants that are all paying for the mortgage and the running costs and everything else. And that's why I was able to build up a property portfolio of over 100 properties, just doing the same again. Why I keep going the same again, you might ask that question. I don't know. It does. I'm way over comfort level. 5 HMOs would have done it enough to retire on. I'd be bored up my skull. It's addicted. Maybe I need a bit of therapy. But then again, you got the other concept. See, being a Scot, you have this big idea that you've got to take over the world. We're supposed to rule. The Scots are there. So you should do the best you can. So obviously look after yourself and your family, but if you can create employment and take over the world, that's what you should do. You should do the best you can with what you got. It's a very strange concept because everyone talks about now getting financial independence and freedom. No one's talking about building a dynasty. No one's talking about building a property or business empire, and that's what they want to do, that creates employment and wealth for other people. It's just not spoken about. So that's how I got started. I bet you wish you hadn't asked now.
No, I mean, it's what's interesting about it, Jim, is I was saying to you before the podcast started, was your story. It fascinates me because, there's so many parts to that I think people are more interested than you might realize in your story, because just going back a bit, you said you grew up in care. And I remember we were on a train going to London, the first time we actually connected properly, and you told me a bit of your story. Would you mind just taking me back to that part of your journey of what was it like, growing up in care, but then how did you break out of that? Because I have friends, one of my closest friends grew up in the care system, and what I can sometimes see in his mind is a limitation, a mindset limitation that has to be overcome, to get to where you've got to. And even people that haven't grown up in, the care system, I'm seeing a similar mindset, but it's different, because with him and some of his friends, there's that fear of, will there be enough? Will there, you're out there on your own, you have to make it, you have to get through it. So I don't know if you would mind maybe just, telling us a bit more about that. What was it like growing up there? But what gave you that drive when I'm sure some of the people you grew up around didn't have that inside of them? What was that difference?
You're right. Your upbringing screws you up, and you're absolutely right about the self-limiting beliefs. People can't. Just to digress slightly, I help people get into property. One of my pleasures is helping people buy property, become financially independent, and a lot. Well, you can take them. You get to the first property, and they just stop then and refuse to go forward. Or they'll buy the property and then drop it. They want to say they want to be financially independent, and they don't. There's something holding them back. They don't want to realise that dream. It's a very strange thing. We're quite strange in our mind. You got it. And also that people being screwed up by being in care. I look back on it, and it's only recently I've looked and said I should be more positive about it. If you had said, what about being up in care, I'd probably give you a sort of fairly fruity mouthful of what I thought of it at the time, which you couldn't broadcast if I said today.
No. Katie would have to edit a lot more.
You would do. And I wish you can decide that, look on the bright side or look on the negative side of things. Okay, I was fed, and I went to, they changed the sheets once a week in your bed. So you were looked after, I suppose, in that way. So I should have taken the advantage. I wish I'd been far naughtier. I wanted to be a good boy. I wanted to get approval, which you never got there. They would always be trying to put you down and find you doing something wrong. So today, I never look forward to anything. People say, aren't you looking forward to going? You're going on a cruise. Aren't you happy about it? I go, no. It's because you psychologically build up, because if they knew you wanted something, you look forward to it, they'd create some wrong you'd done and punish you for it and take it off you. So you sort of eventually became sort of pretty bland and showed no interest in anything that they could punish. They didn't stop them punishing you. They still do it, did it. But that sort of kind of stuff. But I think, why don't I forget that? Why don't I just look about the great side? If I was living in the country, I was being fed, I was compared to people, say, in Palestine at the moment, and a lot of other countries that are starving. I did reasonably well. I mean, talk about child abuse. I mean, they just beat you and mentally cruel. It wasn't the beating so much as the the way you played with your mind was bad. So I wish I'd been a lot more positive and enjoyed things and said, well, it's not so bad. I'd just been on a holiday to Egypt, supposed to be on a cruise up the Nile and all the rest of it. And that brought home to me, because it was a complete screw up. But I was with my daughter, who has that positive approach. And she was saying, well, look at the fun we had. Yeah, we had to do this and that, but we had a range of hotels that we enjoyed. And we had this beautiful trip through the Egyptian countryside, because they had... we had to go and join the ship at the other end for the cruise up the Nile instead of from where we were doing. So we had the trip. So you can take things and be positive about it. But you're right. Probably the worst thing you can do is put kids into care. They take them off their parents. I'm not sure where we are. I'm not going to judge that, but the care system is not fit for the purpose, they say about the parents. And what effect it had on me, I'm not sure. Why did I break the mould? I'm not really sure. I probably think it's a lot to do with the Scottish background.
Was this in Scotland?
I was brought up. I went into care initially in Scotland, and then moved because my father tried to keep control over me, so he would never allow me to be fostered or adopted. In those days, I'd probably got adopted or fostered, but he didn't. I just spent my time in care. And then I went to the southeast of England, so different places. But that probably sort of Scottish heritage, which gave you a bigger, I certainly felt a lot of the big thinking it comes from Scotland. Scotland, if you go to Edinburgh, it's magnificent monuments, magnificent buildings, the grandeur, the idea that if you just say who's made the best inventions ever, most people name Scots people. The people who invented the steam engine, they're all Scots. Penicillin, or Scots, we were famous for this. And that sort of idea that somehow you're above the rest. Probably carried on. I don't know. I just wanted for more, which is probably you could actually say was caused by the upbringing that I wasn't happy to have a sort of fairly standard life. You could say I possibly did all this to hide the damage and how mucked up I am in my head. So this was a distraction from having to look at myself in the mirror and do things to distract myself. So you could say it's a massive distraction, but it's a pretty good one. It's a lot better than drugs and a lot of the other things you could possibly be taking.
Absolutely,
So I'm quite happy with where we are and how it worked out. But you can't.
You and your dad, did you have a relationship at all after the care system, or
not really? I think I felt pretty hard done by being treated like that. So no.
Yeah, because what I find fascinating about it is, with an absent father or an abusive father, what ends up happening, they call it the entrepreneur's wound. Where a lot of people go into entrepreneurship or business. Elon Musk, they point to, they went through a bunch of people that have done that. And it can be a big driving factor. I grew up with an absent father, and Tony Robbins talks about reframing things, like you say, and it can be really difficult. But then I watch even someone like my own brother went a different route, to try and fulfill that wound. I've gone a different route. And I know if I wasn't doing this, building businesses, doing something with my life, I'd be in a very bad place. But then I think the thing that I struggle with sometimes is how do you stop? And I don't want to stop. I love what I do. But seeing your own journey, you seem to have that same thing. And I kind of wonder, is like, what are we searching for? Is there an approval? You said it earlier where that emotional manipulation that you grew up, around, where they promising you something, then pulling it back from you, messing you around. I wonder now, is that voice still driving us more than we realize? Or do you find, was financial independence a point where you had that security, you had proven to yourself that I could do this? Or do you feel like you still have those voices speaking to you now?
There's probably a day doesn't go by where flashback to childhood. No, I really don't know. It certainly would have an effect. I know I'm different, so there's no doubt about that. But then, why did I go and do something productive in my life as opposed to self-destruct and becoming an addict or just a loser in life? I chose the different path, and as I say, things like Tony Robbins helped a lot with that. But most of that stuff came after I'd started in property. It just helped me to improve and develop. Before I got started, it was the one that changed my life was the Midas Touch by Stuart Goldsmith. I'm not saying it's the best. Tony Robbins is certainly far better, but Stuart Goldsmith's book, The Midas Method, got me going and took me out of the mental framework that you have. I almost feel like most people want to cross a plank, but they want to keep it around about 4 or 5 foot off the ground. You're still walking across a plank if you're doing it 1,000 foot above the ground. It's the same thing, 3-inch plank, same. The difference is you've got a long way down, and getting that over that mindset of success. And then the risk taking as well, which is the danger. You become a bit overconfident, and you could end up losing it all. And I nearly have a few times. Not necessarily because of risk taking. Once it was because of risk taking, but most of the time it's just, I suppose it's all risk taking because I overextended myself. And you got something like the 2008 crash, But I would have survived that, and did, luckily, because the banks were told to back off. What was the problem in those days is the banks were going around trying to get the money and bankrupting people by doing so, because they didn't care. They would just destroy businesses so they get a few quid back, which was a bit unfortunate. It's something I mentioned before. When we were talking about my unemployed tenants, at least they're not causing harm. They're sitting there watching telly all day, smoking themselves to death, as opposed to a bank manager's job who's being highly paid, going around trying to destroy people's businesses. It's a bit like taking a gold Rolex watch, throwing the watch away and melting the gold down to get some money back on it. It's a pretty destructive approach. So you are where you are, I suppose, and you enjoy what you got. And as I say, the advice I wish I had, if you're going to look back and say, I'm on my deathbed, what do I wish I'd do? Usually people say they haven't done enough. I think I've done enough. I just wish I had enjoyed it a bit more and spent the time to smell the roses, take more holidays than I did, spend a bit more time doing with friends and my family, and I'm trying to do that now. So I spend the time, but I still can't give up buying property. I mean, last week I bought 4. It's insane, completely insane. Because each time you buy a property, you put yourself at risk. You might, you don't know what you're buying to a certain extent until you get it. But I just still drive on. It's the thing that gets me out of bed and does things.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think as a younger guy that, I absolutely love what I get to do every day, but also I'm trying to be more present, in the day-to-day moments. Even, one of the things I'm most looking forward to today is grabbing a meal afterwards, or, you can merge passion and purpose and your work all together with the right mindset. But also at this point, I'm like, okay, what's the worst that happens? You kind of do this new psychological thing that they talk about where you go to the worst case scenario. And I think, well, if I don't get another deal today because I'm enjoying it, I'd rather, do 2 deals rather than, 3, for example. But I know deep down inside of us, the deal making is what we enjoy. There's something about putting something together that did not exist, or especially the financial engineering side, which we'll come to later. But it's never too late. And I think what I like about your story, I had a younger entrepreneur on before, and they are in a totally different boat right at the beginning of their journey. But I watch people, someone's trying to reinvent the wheel or not learn from people that have lived the life, and saying, actually, we need to slow down here and think, how do we do this? How do we build a lifestyle business? Because I think property is sold as the dream of passive income. You don't have to do much work and all that kind of thing. If you were looking at your 18-year-old Jim, and you were giving that, would that be the last bit of advice you'd leave with him? Or what do you wish that you knew when you were 18 years old if you're starting again?
No, God, that's which way do you turn? Which way do you go? As I say, I was not too impressed about the education system, but it gave me a status in life as a lecturer, a job. If I'd just been a property entrepreneur, I'd still, I think, come to, because we've all got a certain frustration. And having done a law degree and then lecturing, I wish I'd become a lawyer until later in life when I started buying property and then employed lawyers. I thought, no, mate. I don't think I like this job at all. It's a treadmill and also pretty dishonest way of doing business, because you got information and you are deliberately withholding that to get people to pay you for it. Well, I tend to give information away willy-nilly. I've written books on the subject and all the rest of it. You come to me, I'll tell you all about it. You read for a few quid, you can read all the books. That tells you everything I know about my business. So you can learn this free. go to a lawyer, they know what the answer is, but they're going to say, well, we'll have to look into that. We'll open a file, send me £3,000, and we'll get a barrister's opinion on it. Why do you need a barrister's opinion when you're the lawyer and that will cost you another few £1,000s and all the rest of it, and rack it up because they won't make any money at it. All professionals are the same. They're trying to suck you up and take you into the business. And then later, I've been doing it for best part of 20 years, I started evicting tenants. And the ultimate as a lawyer is to become a judge. So you become a solicitor, become a judge. And then I spend my time in front of judges. A lot of them and look at that and I think, would I want to be doing this? It's a complete treadmill of a job of absorbing to take up cases, make judgment and all the rest of it. And I'm not too impressed by them, just as I'm not impressed by lawyers or many people, unfortunately, apart from you.
Thank you.
And so it doesn't sit well. So I do wonder, I'm not quite sure, that's too difficult a question for me at my life, apart from live life a bit more today. I went back the whole of my youth. I wouldn't spend a penny because I was saving that money up so I could do a degree. And then I saved it up so I could buy a house. Also, this need for approval towards the end of my teaching career. Before I was really keen, I wouldn't say boo to a ghost, even though I was dealing with pretty incompetent managers. And then towards the end, I got to the point where I knew I was financially independent. So I was very much, spin on that if you want, approach to the management and the rest. And the whole attitude changed. And where they'd think they could bully me and the rest of it, they'd sort of keep a bit of a distance because I'd be prepared to. Nothing is so important that you can't just say, "Oh, stuff you. You don't appreciate me. I'm going to leave." And
would you have been? Sorry, Jim. Would you have been more of a people pleaser in your early years? Then did you find because the Jim that I know that I've seen talk at functions and that. You seem to push the boundaries and you're not afraid to, when you're dealing with councils or, planning authorities that are telling you, you can't do this, you stand against it. But so that's because I didn't know that part of your story is, was that you seem to allude that it's the financial independence that gives you that confidence, or was it, other people starting to believe in you when they started seeing you accomplish that which people told you was impossible?
Yeah, I think I to come back, we're all a contradiction, and I'd probably say yes, I'm a people pleaser. I like to when I employ people, I like them to be happy. I'm not one who's into confrontation and being nasty or a power control. So I try and say that the office is a friendly place to be. A bit strange because people moan about it that they can bring the children into the office. Though sometimes most of the kids are lovely, but one or two I wish they'd stayed at home. They are not. I just assume they're all like my kids, who are obviously wonderful. I'll tell you what, the best recreation seems to be playing in the office. They get the sellotape and the pens and the paper, and they just love playing with that and photographing every part of their anatomy on the photocopy, which is. When you think, the cost of photocopy is 10p a copy, and they've run off 20 copies of their hand and compared hands and all the rest of it. But it's entertaining. I love that. And the other thing is, I used to do the gardening, cut the grass, and they'd come and help me because some of the properties have got big gardens. And they just love running up and down the garden, especially if there's a pond there. And that was sort of part and parcel. They'd come round, they'd work with me. I remember running a course, and my kids were there, and they, as you quite rightly say, people want the personal side of things. I thought that was very strange. If you want to come on a course, you're spending me money to come on a course, and you're interested in what I think. Does it matter what I think? It's how do you do it? That's what I think you want to do. How would I make money? How to do this? So my kids were there, and they went, "Oh yeah, how are you doing? What do you think?" And would you like to do what your dad does, be a landlord? And they went, "Yeah, lovely." yeah, I want to do that. Well, why do you want to do that? And he said, well, you go around taking money off people and then kicking them out. Which increased the audience up. And if I think about it, look at it from a child's point of view, yes, I was going around, collecting the rent. And I was saying to people, look, if you don't want to pay the rent, jog on. I should add, here's something that's a bit contradictory. Being a people pleaser, I felt you should run the business quite ethically. So when I started up the business, I set some principles. And one of them is a no eviction policy. I would not evict a tenant who could not pay the rent. So that was a policy. I wrote it. It was on the, put it in the office. It was stuck up saying no eviction policy, where I say, you can't evict. If you can't pay the rent, come and talk to us. We'll sort it out for you. By the way, just in case you think I'm losing a load of money on that, in the 35 years I've been running property, I've never come across a tenant who could not pay the rent. It's always will not pay the rent, can but will not. But we'll help them because we've got this wonderful system in the country. If you can't pay the rent, you get universal credit. But you'd be surprised how many tenants refuse to claim universal credit. They don't mind claiming unemployment benefit themselves, but they won't claim for me for the rent, or they just think they don't have to pay the rent. So I evict a lot of tenants, too many, I feel. But even though I've got a no eviction policy, so there's a bit of people pleaser, or shall I say, the need to show that you're acting reputable. Because unfortunately, landlords have a terrible reputation and are hated. And it's mainly because we don't get up there and say, look what we're doing. I mean, you watch programs about the homeless crisis and all the rest of it. It's all to do with building more houses, social housing or council housing. No one talks about the private sector and how if you took the controls off the private sector, it would end a homelessness crisis. No, you've got to punish private landlords and give a lot more money to the social sector so they can build more houses. Yeah, private landlords for a fraction of the cost will provide a lot more housing, but that's conveniently forgotten about. So we're a bit of a twisted world we live in.
No, it is. It is. And I think that's the sad part is a part of why I'm wanting to do podcasting is it won't just be on property and that, but is just reframe for people, what it is business actually brings to an economy, to a society that if, what you are solving is a big, big crisis that the government's tried to for years and they can't do it. And the more people try and, build more houses, who's building them? Private sector, and not enough because of all the legislation, all the red tape, that kind of thing. But I find it so interesting with your kids being around the training and that. I find that's what I'm trying to do with my girls is I want them to grow up seeing it. And my daughter, she's smart. She's 5 and she comes around with me. I had to run and hoover our house quickly before a tenant because no one else could do it. And there I am. I said, okay, come with me and I'll pay you 20p for an hour. And she comes in, walks into the house and goes, Daddy, this house is very dirty. And I said, she said, why is that? I said, well, the tenant's just not left it in a good condition. But that's why we're here. And she said, why are we here on a Sunday afternoon? There. I said, because every day this house sits empty is lost revenue. And I explained mortgage payments to her and all of that. I think what a privilege, for your kids to have been able to grow up in that. And that's why I always say to people, it's not either or, you're not, you can be a good present father and they can be with you on the journey. And I don't know, did you enjoy, having kids, raising kids whilst also, was it at the same time of building the business? I mean, what sort of age were they when the portfolio was really getting going?
I didn't have children until I was over 50. Where are we? I must have been about 55.
Right.
So I didn't know where they came from. And suddenly these kids were appearing. Where did that come from? What do you mean you're pregnant? I mean, how'd you get pregnant? I mean, it's just that it appeared. It's not something I wanted, but I'm so grateful I did have children. And a good job I didn't start earlier because I would have probably had a lot more children. But it was such pleasure to have children, especially when they're young. Not so much now; they don't seem to be too much bothered with their dad anymore. But when they were younger, and I made a point of probably going back to sort of 200 years ago, where children would be part of the family. They'd go to work, and it was totally integrated. So I built an office especially for the children. It was supposed to be a Pooh house because my dad was into Winnie the Pooh. Unfortunately, the builders took so long to build it. By that time, he was into Spider-Man.
All right.
They would just come into the office, they'd play, as I said, they just love playing, they'd bring their friends round, and they'd be there. Like now we're doing the broadcast, they'll be there. And they'd like to got the cat and the dog. They would be around me and come out and when I went around on the rounds to collect, deal with tenants and all the rest of it. By the way, a little tip for you, talk about cleaning the house. What I tend to do now is when the tenant turns up, I say, sorry, but the state of the place is going to be clean. I'll get the cleaners in next week or whatever it is. But if you want it, I'll sort of knock a few quid off the rent if you take it as is. And you'd be amazed how many tenants, because we have a different standard, will look at it and say, what's wrong with this? This looks all right to me. Oh, yeah. Feel at home with the washing up still in the sink, you know. But, you can keep the crockery. That's it. If you want to wash it up or don't want to wash it up. And I'd be amazed how many of my tenants would do that. You make assumptions that, surprising enough, I just share that. It's one of the share. Most people would actually charge you a few thousand quid to come on a course for that little
absolutely.
trick.
We'll sell it later. You know, the £20,000 Haliburton course.
That's it.
You know, we'll get it marketed.
Good.
Yeah.
That sounds good fun.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I think but you know, it's so interesting. I'm just loving the conversation because I think there's so many people know enough in property, or there's enough information out there to get going, but they don't get started. They stay stuck in those mindsets that we're talking about. And a lot of the time I root it to childhood. You know, I see it in the church all the time. You know, I'm very involved in that side of things. And I always come to these limiting beliefs that people hold about themselves, approval, all the things we've talked about. But then it gets to a point of, and I found this, when someone else actually believes in you, that you can do it, that's an incredibly empowering thing as a teacher, you know, believing in a student, saying, you can do this. And what I loved when I went on your commercial to residential course, and we're sitting in, you know, where you're doing the thing, and you just say, you know, anything I'd ask you a question about, I'd say, Jim, can you do this? Yes, of course you can. You know, why can't you? And I remember thinking, why can't I? You know, and you know, you're rewiring your brain, rewiring. And I wonder if you're talking to someone who's just starting out right now, and they wanting to take that leap, they haven't taken the leap. What would your advice be to them? You know, to take that first step. What would that be for someone wanting to get into property or even business, or just get over that psychological hurdle, especially when the voices, not even the internal voices, a lot of the time it's a spouse, you know, someone around them that, you know, you had it with your first wife, where they saying, if you buy a property, you know, and it just really, you're pulling in different directions. What would you say to someone in the midst of that would help them get to that next stage?
Yeah. Well, if you're living with someone who doesn't want you to do it, you've got to make a choice, unfortunately. And that will be a very hard choice, I think, to make. You can't do something with your other partner fighting against you all the way. Well, you can, but it's going to be very, very difficult and cause so much stress and strain. I've even had partners after my wife left who I made financially independent. I've done that, and they still haven't appreciated what I've done for them, which I find a bit strange. But they haven't got to work for the rest of their lives because they've got enough money from property. They're limited to the amount of property that they had, mainly because they didn't want any. Because I've got property and I've got enough property. I just keep buying it, but if I'm going to buy it, I might as well put it in your name instead of my name. If you're going to take it and run away, you'll take it and run away anyway. So it doesn't really matter. But getting started, I think it's got difficulty. If you're just doing it from yourself as say an 18-year-old, I mean, the easiest possible way to do it is to get your first house and have lodgers in. So you can afford to run your property So you want a property that is suitable for having lodgers. You want your own privacy. So you get a particular layout of a house where you've got part of it, they've got part of it. It's still a lodger. You've got a tax-free income of $7,500 a year. They haven't managed to do anything about that so far, and that would actually run the cost of your house. I did that when I was a student, but unfortunately, I then got married, and that put a stop to this. But initially, I lived in effect rent-free because I had lodgers, our fellow students in the house, and that's where I'd start with. And you can take that a step further because you'll get the one, well, how can I save up 30 grand for the deposit and all the rest of it? Well, I think we're coming into a recession, but even if you're not in a recession, there's always times where people can't sell a property for various reasons. Quite often they want too much for it. Now, if you're of the mindset that property is going to double every 10 to 20 years, it doesn't really matter what you pay for it today, as long as it's not more than double the value, but if it's 10 or 20% more, because with prices, it'll catch up. So the advice to a youngster, but very few will take on that responsibility. Or you're right, the key to all is the belief, the willingness to take on risk and responsibility, which they wouldn't want to do. But yeah, I mean, even my own children won't do that. I tell them this is what they should be doing, and no, Daddy, you give me a house more is the approach to what, which is, okay, fine, I don't mind, but it'd be nice if they did a bit more entrepreneurial approach to things, and they don't. You know, they've got the support. As you say, the encouragement helps. Though I can't remember who gave me any encouragement to do what I did. People have helped me along the way, don't get me wrong, but I just did it. It was just madness. I look back on it. I'm a complete contradiction to the situation I was brought up and how I was brought up.
Yeah, but you've overcome. Yeah, you've overcome it, and I think that's the amazing part, and that's what I love about property, because for me, I know, they talk about having a chip on your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
You're walking out trying to prove, and if someone doubts me, I find that drives me more than someone who is really behind me saying, go for it. It's the doubters that will drive me more, where they're saying, you can't do something. Or I remember Lease Options when I first started, and I think I came up and saw you and, Gary, we were chatting, and we were on this drive, we were going to some function thing. And I remember this talking through Lease Options, and one of the things that really struck me by it was all the people I talked to about it in my friendship circle said it's illegal.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
And none of them are legally qualified or whatever. Here I have a law professor, or someone teaching lecturing law, and saying no, it is legal. And I have a friend who's saying it's legal. But I remember this real moment of wrestle, because all the people you're surrounded by are all in the same boat, and they don't really want you to go forward. So their natural thing is, let me just discount this whole thing and say it's illegal. And so when I tried to explain it, we buy cars and, we lease them, and then we have the option to purchase. I said, I just can't see why that's possible. So I can buy a liability that way, but I can't buy an asset. And I really had to overcome that. I had to overcome that circle. But the way I overcame it was looking at what I call OPS now. Everyone talks about OPM, OPT, other people's time, other people's money. But then OPS is other people's stories. And I think your story is just going to impact so many lives, because if someone has an excuse listening to this, it gets dissipated, because they're sitting there right now, I think, is the greatest opportunity in history to make money. And you just need half a brain and you can go for it, but you need the guts to step into it. But property, with all of the lending available, all of the markets, you can get out there and do it. And I just think it's crazy. But one of the things we talked about just before, and so we're sticking in the starting phase quite a while, because I want to look at starting, scaling, and selling, and looking at the different aspects of your journey in that. But a lot of the time, people are really stuck at the starting phase and they just can't get out the gates. But one of the things that's been kind of thrown about on YouTube and all the gurus at the moment is rent to rent. So the big sale point to everyone is you don't need any money to get into this. Get into rent to rent. You'll have a great cash flow, great life. You'll be wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. What's your view on rent to rent? And what would you encourage people to do?
Right. Yeah. Rent to rent, I always say it's from Muppets, even though I go to rent events that Steve used to run in London. But I'd always stand up and say, you don't want to do rent to rent, you want to do rent to buy. That's the key. The big value in property is capital appreciation, but it's just another way. And what's a rent to buy? But it's a purchase lease option. But that right to buy makes all the difference. That a really important part. You also feel much more confident in the property because you're going to invest in money which you will buy at some stage along the line. So yeah, I think rent to rent, but it's better off rent to buy, and it can easily be done. I'll go there and talk to someone, they'll say about renting it, and I say, well, have you thought of selling it? Well, yeah, but can't sell it. That's why I'm doing a rent to rent. Oh, okay. Well, if I could buy it sometime in the future, would you do it? And in the agreement, it's just one line. I have the option to purchase this property, and I let them name the price. They normally want about 10 or 20% more than it's worth. But hey ho, as I said, property doubles over in 10 years. So as long as you give yourself long enough to buy it, you just wait till the price goes up. What you don't want to do is where I took over a property that was worth 100,000. He had a mortgage of 160,000 on it. This is just, he bought right at the top of 2008. The prices crashed. He rented it out, wouldn't even cover the mortgage. The poor lad was in a dire state. He'd moved on. He was a doctor. And I came along and said, I'll take it over. I'll buy it for 160,000. He knew it was only worth 100,000. He knew he could only rent it out if he was to rent it for £400. But I said, I'll pay the mortgage on the basis that it would go up in value. I forgot all about it. It was a sort of small deal. I didn't really take much notice of it. He then phoned me up, when you're going to do it? Oh, yeah, fine. But I never found the time to do it. And eventually I suddenly, I've got a bit of cash here. I'll exercise the option to purchase because you need to put a deposit down most of the time, not always, to buy the properties. And by that time, it'd gone up to 260,000. So he was agreeing to sell it to me for 160,000, and it's worth 260. And I thought, well, it's going to be a hard, even though he's a professional, all the rest of it. You'll find this in life when money and principle or ethics get involved. Guess what always wins? Is it the money or is it the principle, the ethical principle? No, it's the money. Generally, people will renege. So you don't want to leave too much temptation, too much on the table. And he went, yeah. Do you know what it's worth now? And I said, yes. He said, seems a bit harsh that you're going to only buy it for that price. You forget, he would have probably gone bankrupt if he kept the property because he couldn't afford it. If he gets that.
He's forgotten about it. He's left that behind.
Yeah. Was it 2000? It was about 10 years afterwards I bought it off him. And I say, they'd gone behind it. And I said, well, what do you want to do? They said, well, I think you should give me more money. I said, how much more money? I thought, well, if he wants 250 for it, you can forget it. I'm not interested. It wasn't a particularly great property. It's all right. I mean, as such. But it's, how about another 10 grand? Okay, fine. Keeps him happy. I can mortgage it, get the money back. What do you get on a 260 mortgage? I think it's 75%.
7 or something.
150, yeah. The money was in there, so I gave him the extra cash. But there's a tip. Don't let it get too high. Tie it in. And the other thing about it was when I first started doing it, I did it before it was actually known, anyone talked about it, purchase lease option. I did it when it was illegal. Everyone say, go to a solicitor, you can't do that. And the people holding you back, as you say, you got the doubters, that pushes you on. I wouldn't say the doubters push me on because I like to canvass people's opinions and views. I haven't had anyone say, go for it, Jim. It's mostly just the braying horses. Yeah, look at that. And most of the time when the louder they laugh at me, the bigger the joke is, the joke turns back on them. So you got to get used to that braying horse mentality. Oh, look at that! That's got a crack in it. It's falling down. It's on the tilt. It's got woodworm. It's got dry rot. It's got asbestos. Oh, asbestos, terrible. Depending on what type of asbestos it is, it's not necessarily a problem. Or look at just the state of it. It's dirty. Yeah, well, clean it and it's perfectly okay. I mean, why don't you buy a house because it's dirty? I mean, that's unbelievable. But anyway, you can do the deals. So yeah, rent to rent is a way of doing it. I don't know why people want to. It's like flipping properties or sourcing properties. If you can source a property, why would you give it away when if you could buy it yourself, and make a few grand? You're far better off keeping it yourself. Okay, it'll take a year or two before it returns any money, maybe, but then you'll have an income for life. And you get people flip properties and make 10 grand when it can make them 20 grand a year for the rest of their lives. It makes no sense to me, but it is how people are wired and how they think. And thank goodness for that, because they can flip it my way or source it my way, and they don't want it. Fine. It does me good. And I'll tell you another little tip is be prepared to help people in the property journey. The number of properties I picked up where people have come to me and said, Jim, I'm thinking of buying this. Can you have a look at it for me? And it's clear when as I explained to them, I think, yeah, this is a good deal. And now I got my head around it. It didn't. When you look at it, you don't realise it's such a good deal. The one in particular had a massive garage attached to it, and that was the sort of drawback. What can you do with this garage? And there's no demand for it. All the rest of it. But you got the rest of the building. And forget the garage. The building makes money. The whole deal. Let's look upon the garage as a chimney pot. You don't use chimneys nowadays. Who has a coal fire anymore? They don't. So just look at it as a chimney pot. You've got a big garage at the back. Forget about it. Buy it for the property. Oh, no, I don't think I want this. Okay, well, do you mind if I take it? I haven't spent the time on the morning going around looking at it, assessing it. And the owner's there, so there's me. Well, how quickly do you want the money? Can we do a purchase lease option on this one? And no, I don't want the money. I just want rid of the liability. Okay, I'll take it off your hands today. Shake hands, and I'll give you your asking price sometime in the future. Are we okay with that? Job done.
Yeah.
It was as easy as that. I could see you could turn the front part of it, with the offices, into accommodation. That would cover once you turn it into accommodation, you get it valued up on the income it's producing. I could afford to buy it and cash some money out. And I had this big garage stuck at the back, which now I've started to rent out. But in those days, there wasn't really much demand. But now I'm finding there's quite a bit of demand for commercial space, mainly from people in the car trade. Enormous number of people who want to rent property for doing things to cars, doing them up, specialist cars, doing adaptations to them, or in one case, stripping them, take it apart, sell it off bit by bit. You can make a lot more on a car by selling it off bit by bit than you would do weighing it in. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's so true. Like, as you go on your journey, you come across these deals that I'm still gutted, because when I did my first leafleting strategy, so I did 20,000 leaflets and I got my first lease option deal that way. That's how I started. But I missed 2 potential deals just because I didn't have the knowledge, the knowledge of how, because I just had one framework. Okay, here's where I'm going. Here's what I've got to do. Here's how I've got to make it happen. But then I managed to, build it up from there. And now I know what to present. And it's incredible what you can do in property with the right education, the right knowledge, and just the guts just to ask, because you just never know. But what I think what will be interesting for people now is looking at, so you scaled incredibly, actually. One of the deals I'd love for you to talk about is your biggest HMO deal, that you took me around to. How did you structure that? How did you come about that? From what I remember, it was 220 beds at the time. And, what were some of the lessons around that? Because again, in people's mindsets, they think a big HMO is 7 bedrooms. So you go and create an HMO with 220 bedrooms, which I think's absolutely amazing. And if you wouldn't mind just talking through the numbers of that, how did that all work out for you?
Yeah. It's a one-off deal that took a lot of nerve to take on. It was actually insane. It should have been certified on that one. It's a tower block that was offices with, I even miscounted the floors on the property. And initially I had a much smaller scale on it. I was only going to take 4 floors of it. So it's had 11 floors. I did the maths on it, and if I split up the first 4 floors, that would be enough to bring the income to value to be able to buy the building. The owner wanted to get a shot of it. I'd done business with him before, very much on the same approach. I'll take it off him, give him a few quid as a show consideration. This one was a bit different. He wanted a bit more for the property. He wanted £5,000 down. Okay, fine. It was neither here or there. Most of the time it's £1 down and the right to buy it in the future. And the driving, the why does the person want to offload it is to get rid of the business rates. He had bought that building, not for the building, but for the car parking. It was in the centre of town, and he had 300 car parking spaces that went with it. And he spent $2.5 million buying the whole lot. And it's a bit like buying a Bounty bar of chocolate. He's left with a wrapper. But unfortunately, the wrapper costs a lot of money to dispose of, $140,000 in business rates. I could see if I turned it into residential on 4 floors, that would cover the cost and the conversion cost. So that was my limitation at the time. Yeah, here it is. And I happened to throw it in when I was talking to a group of people saying, does anyone want to invest $400,000 on this deal? And there's very few people with that kind of money. And so this is what we need to convert it. We'd remortgage it and then enable us to buy it by mortgaging it, having spent the money, turning it into an HMO. And this chap who was attending the course said, yeah, I'm from London. So that to someone from London was peanuts for that whole building. And he took it forward and decided to develop the whole building based on nothing more than he wanted to do it. And he thought it was a good idea. His daughter had gone to university, so he got the model of operation from his daughter who went to university in London. So it's very much down to my JV partner. Most of the time when I partner up, when I do JVs, the JV puts the money in, I find the property. I'm always up to my neck in deals. I'd like to keep it all to myself. I don't want to partner with other people. I'd rather buy it and keep it all to myself, but there's a limit to how much you can recycle. It's all very well saying, yes, you can buy the property, you get your money back out, but it takes the best part of a year to do that. So I've only been doing this for 35 years. So if I'd followed that approach, I'd probably only be able to do 35 deals. It's by bringing other people on board with you that you can do a lot more deals because you're using their money, but my skill, ability and contacts to do the deal. So they just sign the checks and I guarantee they'll get the money back and an income for life, and we share the deal and the income. So they don't have to do anything. I take all the risk for them. Barry was a little bit different. That's my JV partner on this one. He took over the deal, and he's a lovely bloke, don't get me wrong, but you just don't want to get into conversation with him. He'll talk to you to death. And he's one of these people, if he has an idea, he'll keep talking until you submit.
Right.
And I'll have my views on it. He has his view on it. And you could do it this way, you could do it that way. It's 6 of one and half a dozen the other. No, my view is not quite his way. There's very little I disagreed radically in what he did, but he just took it over. And I thought, well, if he wants to run it, do it. Though, if you are going to JV, that one was successful. Where I've had other JVs get involved, it's always gone wrong. They've come up with an idea and then it's gone wrong and I've had to pick up the bits, but they blame me for it going wrong. Well, you wanted to do it that way. Now you're blaming me. You haven't got the integrity to say, well, it's my bad decision that resulted in this not going right, they probably justify it to themselves by saying, I should have stopped them. But they were adamant they wanted to do it this way at the time. And sometimes it's just instinct. You just feel that's not the way to do it. There's no right and wrong. Or another way you want to look at it that way. Whichever way you do it, as long as you buy property, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
It really is. It's very forgiving property. So even you make a bad deal, all that happens is you have a few years where you're not making much money. But if you hold with the property, then it starts to make money. So if you're in the position to be able to live on fresh air for a while, it doesn't matter. Or if you've got a load of other properties and you bought another one and it's not made any money for 5 years, you can sort of go along with it. As long as it's not sucking up too much money. You don't want a money pit, but if it's not making money, it doesn't really matter because it'll gradually will make money because the rents will go up and price of property will go up. I've forgotten what the question was. What was the question?
With Barry, so with that big 220 bed, what were the numbers? How did you structure it? So I know you said you had a £5,000 fee down. So exchange contracts, what is the time period you had on that?
Oh, it's so much serendipity in this. To be able to develop the whole building, which is what Barry did, I wanted just to do it floor by floor, remortgage each floor, get the money out, the next floor, and that's how I was going to finance it. He went big, and he wanted to do the whole, half the building in one go. And it was just luck that a new finance company had set up, and the person who was the salesman, I suppose, for it, the one who goes around trying to find clients for the money, came from Wolverhampton and had faith in Wolverhampton. You talk to most people, Wolverhampton, who the hell wants to live there, kind of attitude. And we did try and shop round and go to various London finance companies, and they just threw us out. What do you mean you want money to do a 220-bed HMO in Wolverhampton? Who wants to live there? I mean, where are you going to get the professional tenants? 220 tenants. It's a joke. You're sort of in some la-la land. They were quite polite. They just said no. There's the door. But this person had faith, lent the money, Barry's enthusiasm. Things went wrong with the project. We eventually got it off the ground. Good job. Grenfell happened afterwards because we would never been allowed to finish with Grenfell. That was the tyre disaster with the fire. Having enormous problems with that because now after the fire, after the big cock-up the government made, they've gone round, tightened the regulation for every other person who's got a tyre block. You know, there's 180 tyre blocks sitting empty in London because they can't finish them because of the aftermath of the Grenfell tyre. So imagine how much accommodation is just being wasted, how many people are going bankrupt because they can't finish their project because they now decided to change the regulations on tyre blocks. So it took a lot more money, I'm not kidding you, and a lot more than we ever expected at the beginning. So that's why I said don't do it. I think even today, if I was to be approached on this, I mean, things like my assumption I could only do 4 floors was flawed because you still have to protect the whole building. I was told you could just get away with the floors and forget the upstairs, but you couldn't. There's still, you have to put in protection. You'd have to fire alarm the whole building, even though you're only using 4 floors. Well, that's a cost I hadn't built in. And when you're getting over certain flights, as say, the wiring and all the rest of it you have to do is a lot more difficult. So it's a one-off, insane thing to do, which is completely irrational. And this is where I think when you look back on your life, there's a bigger force going on there that somehow has kept me out of trouble and succeeded. I'd love to say it's all my own efforts and mine. It's a bit like I paid for the ticket. Someone else, the lap of the gods, decided that I would win that day. So I'm quite humble about it. That this was an insane project that worked, and a lot of things I've done have been completely insane. Hence the braying donkeys, who were probably right. It was insane to do what I did, but you just got to go ahead and do it. If you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. But in this country, we don't like people to lose. Apparently, according to the statistics in America, some of the richest people in the country have gone bust or nearly bust 3 times. So the biggest winners are the biggest losers. Interesting concept, that.
It is. It is. And it's so true because from what I remember on that one is how did you exit on an investment valuation? I presume, or how did you
Oh, yeah.
refi the exit? So you had the option. Did you have to bridge it and then exit it onto?
Got it. Yes, sorry. We bridged to do the building work and get the finance was on a short-term bridge, which a finance company came up with. And then once we'd completed the building, we went to another lender. And again, very serendipity. There's a lender that I met where the senior lending manager just took a shine to me. And when I showed him the project, he just fell in love with it. And he said, oh, I'm going to finance this. I don't think many people would have financed it. And it's turned out well at the end, but went through a lot of problems with the whole building. And we are still now because the Grenfell Tower, they're requiring strategies and God knows what else to deal with the aftermath of that terrible disaster.
No, it's incredible, but I think sometimes people look at a big project like that and they think that's the pinnacle, that's what you're aiming for. But I always tell people, sometimes it's sticking in what the quick you can get in a deal, out a deal. With the current financing, we're able to do it, 4 to 6 months. You can be from purchase to refinance and you've got your money back. And, I think it's just, I always encourage, because I've heard some people when they're starting out, they just say, go big, go and do the biggest thing you can. I said, no, just go to a basic, buy a refurb, refinance, exit it, and just understand the whole process, because the risk, you don't know what your risks are sometimes when you go into a deal, especially that size. But one of the things you said, the way you scaled, then it sounds like you used a joint venture finance. So you're basically working on a 50-50 basis. I presume they put the money in, you found the deal as a general kind of structure. Would that be correct in saying?
Generally, I started after the 2008 recession JVing because I couldn't get finance. And because of my own financial situation, that would stop me getting finance. So I was being offered all these deals, and because I love talking about property and I was doing training, so I started to thought, well, let's go out and start doing some JVs. So I came up with this concept of joint venturing on a 50-50 basis. Other people on a different basis. People say, oh, yeah, joint venture. And what's that? Oh, someone lent me the money and I gave it back to them. So the joint venture was them providing the cash. And yes, when you're only getting 2% in the bank, people were quite happy to lend money at 6, 8, 12% for them to finance it. But mine has always been this 50-50 approach. I've just been approached by someone who wants to lend me money and just wants a rate of interest on it, secured on property. Fine, that's what you want. That seems a bit daft to me, but it's what works for you. And yes, most of the deals I've done recently, the last few years, have all been JVs. It's so much more convenient because they provide the cash. I've got the builders, the contacts. I guarantee to get the work done, get it remortgaged, and get your money back out. And I've got the infrastructure to let it, the staff to deal with all that. So the whole process gets done. And I say they just write the check, but they own the property themselves. We share it 50-50, 50% profit and 50% of the cost of the value of the property. And they have the money again to hopefully carry on buying more deals with me. But most of the time they look at it and think, if that's how easy it is, and I make it look easy because I've done it for many years, I'll just go off and do it myself. And good luck to them, fine. At least I've done one deal with them. Don't come back crying to me. If it goes tits up, I'll help you, but don't get me wrong. But you've decided to go off and do it yourself. You do it yourself. If I'm working with you, I'll take the can. If you're doing it yourself, best of luck. And it's not that hard to do. No. It is quite amazingly simple. People think it's complicated, but it's not. It's just having the ability to put up with it. And the other thing I find very strange about property is how many people want to be in property, but none of them want to be landlords. It's a bit like, I want to be a
That's
footballer.
interesting. Yeah.
I don't want to go out and run up the field and kick a ball. Why anyone? I'm not into football, by the way. So why anyone would want to run up and down and kick a ball, I don't know. But it's as crazy as that. Yeah, I want to teach, but I don't want to deal with kids. I mean, that's what you do as a teacher. Yeah, I like the idea of doing that, but the number of people don't want to deal with tenants. All my tenants have got my phone number. Every one of them. I've got about 660 tenants. Every one of them has my phone number. It's on the board. Phone me if you want. Very few do. And yeah, I get occasionally people phone up, yelling and shouting at me. But most of the time, they're quite respectful. But I feel it's important. You are the landlord. You're a man in charge. You've got a problem, you can come to me. Yeah, my staff will fall down occasionally. I fall down occasionally, get things wrong. You can contact me and deal with this. But other people are rough, right? Well, you've got their phone number. They can ring you any time of day. Yes, they can. That's what I think. But I'm proud of what I do. I try and do it to high standards, so you won't have people phoning up and complaining about it. For the first 20 years of my business, I did all the call-outs. I did all the out-of-hour call-outs. People didn't, having to go out late at night and all the rest of it and get upset about it. You know, your beauty sleep had been woken. Well, the great trick with that one is don't bother waking up. Just so you get phoned up. Oh, all right, yeah. Phone a taxi. Usually I've had a drink or something like that. Well, we're going to have a drink, by the way. You've got it all there looking out there.
Yeah.
Get it poured. I just throw a dressing gown on. The local taxi comes along, picks me up. Can you wait there, mate? Go. Let the person in. Usually they've locked themselves out. So it saves them kicking the door in. Get back in the taxi, doze in the taxi, go back to bed. So nothing's happened. But others get really upset about it. And by getting upset, they can't go back to sleep because they've upset themselves. Yeah.
That's incredible. Do you want some ice?
No, I don't take ice, thanks.
Oh, don't you? You go straight. You want something? Yeah, I'll pour you one.
Thank you.
No, it's what I found fascinating because I heard you say that on another podcast that all the tenants have your number, and I couldn't believe that because I know how much. Yeah, I mean, it really blew my mind. Does your phone not keep ringing or no?
I probably get one phone call from a tenant a week, and it's usually the same one who phones me up. Some of them have a sort of got my number and they like to have a little chat with me. So yes, but no, most of them don't. But that's probably a lot to do with I've got great staff. I allocate staff to manage the properties, and they're often better at dealing with people. They're female, and if you're a lonely male, do you want to talk to a hairy-ass bloke like me, or do you want to chat to an attractive female? No, you'd rather have a chat with the females. They don't take any nonsense, but they are people, if you want to say. They know how to relate to people, pleasant. I've watched them in action, how to de-stress the situation where they're upset. They don't try and argue back or whatever it is. Don't shout at me and all that kind of nonsense. It's just let them blow, calm down, apologise. Sorry you feel that way, not apologise for the fact they've locked themselves out. But it's not fault. And yeah, they handle it. So it could be that. I'm not sure. You don't know what the cause and effect is. But I just felt it's important that you should be able to deal with the person in charge and make the decision. Because as I say, I'm proud and I do things the right way. Some people just feel a bit upset that I've got to pay the rent. But unfortunately, that's the deal. But if you get problems with the property, yeah. I mean, like now we've had 35 days of rain. We must have about 10 roofs leaking. Why haven't you fixed it? Well, you can't fix a roof while it's pouring down with rain. And leaks are a very strange thing to identify. You can't always do it. Sometimes I've had about 4 or 5 roofers and they can't identify the cause of the leak. Why is that roof leaking? We just don't know.
It's a nightmare.
It's a pain. So, yeah.
Jim, cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I'm enjoying the chat. And I think going to the next part, which, again, we could spend a ton of time on each of these, but because like joint venturing, I think how you choose which partners to work with and that kind of thing, I think would be fascinating to go down, maybe on a part two or something, because I almost think it's like getting married to somebody. You know, there's so many things that can come up, and I like to try and keep it as simple as possible. But I think the next phase of your journey, which I'm intrigued by, is the selling phase. Because when I knew you, I think at your peak you had about 1,000 tenants, if I'm not mistaken. Which I just remember seeing all the keys for the houses and the rooms and that.
Yeah.
And as a young guy, who had just arrived in the country, £550, I was getting mentored by one of the best, and then he introduces me to you. I see these keys, I thought, wow, that looks amazing. But how is that even possible? And you go there. But you went through a sale part of your portfolio. You mind just talking? I know there's maybe parts you can't share fully, but yeah, what happened with that? Like, what were you trying to do? Sell half the portfolio at the time? And what was the structuring of the sale?
Okay, now we're getting into the embarrassing part, the disaster part, but goes to show I'm human, I suppose. This was, as I say, with the 220 bed, Lady Luck's shines a light on me, or I was very lucky with that one to get away with it. This one I didn't get away with. It all started with an ex-mentee of mine saying he's now going around sourcing portfolios. A lot of people will do a bit of sourcing. It's usually one property. No, we were sourcing portfolios. Apparently there's a big interest from various Arab and Russian and various other investors to buy portfolios of property. And I thought, well, who always want to buy an HMOs? Yeah, you go and buy a portfolio in London of nice properties, or maybe in Bristol. That's attractive to the Chinese, but not around where I am, the Black Country. It's a black country for a name, the rest of it. And I said, well, if you can sell it for what the properties are valued at, which is a big difference from what you get for them, but this is based on the income they were producing, that they were, I think at the time it was worth £26 million, the portfolio. I'd got £10 million worth of, £16 million worth of borrowing on it, the property. I said, oh, you can make me 10 million. I'll take that and I'll jog on. I didn't really think what I could do about it. It was just a light throwaway comment, because they had said they could do this. And they came back and said, yeah, we can get it. Here we are. Here's the buyer, and met them. Yes, they're interested in buying for this price and all the rest of it. But they weren't. They were just a bunch of crooks. They had no intention of buying the properties from me. What they were going to do is flip them. So they agreed a price with me, 26 million. I would have to pay off the mortgage, so I'd be left with £10 million, pay tax on it and all the rest of it. But you don't need any more money. I thought, well, I can make a decision as to what I want to do then, perhaps set up a charity, a cat sanctuary, I don't know, whatever. But this would be an opportunity to get rid of all my properties. And if I wanted to, I could even start again. HMOs are great, but they're a lot of work and a lot of hassle, and they're becoming more and more over-regulated. So if you built up a portfolio of, say, single lets, that would be a better way of going about business, because single lets are very much let and forget, easy to operate. And if I had 100 single lets, I could run them virtually by myself. I have a crew of about 30 people running all my HMOs. That's the number of staff I need to be able to operate an HMO. It's a bit like running a hotel almost, it's sort of in between. So that was a deal. Then we ran into COVID. They cleverly managed to clamp, they put a charge on the properties so I couldn't do anything with them. And all they were doing is really just waiting their time, kept promising, false promises after false promises, knowing that you take your foot off the business, start thinking about going off somewhere else, and they just chip you down. So they got to the point where they're offering me on a 14 million on a portfolio that I owed 16 million on. And I said, well, look, if I sold it to you for that kind of price, I'd lose 2 million quid. I just couldn't afford to do it. So they eventually gave up on me. I released the properties so I could then deal with it. And then someone came in and said, look, we want to buy these. I've got the money here. And it was nothing like the price, but I took the best, not the best, but some of the better properties out of the portfolio, kept quite a few, and said, right, this got me out of a hole, because at that time they'd sucked me down with COVID and the rest. I thought, well, do I try and dig myself out of this hole, or do I sell not the whole portfolio, but 90% of them, keeping some of the better properties and have an easier life? Because I won't be starting from a position of loss. So I decided to go ahead and sell. So that's how it sold. It wasn't intended. I still maintain the view, keep your properties, perhaps rationalise them into single lets, which require less work, because the big problem you got is managing HMOs. It needs staff to do it. And staffing, if you want to get on to the real bane in life, it's staff. I just don't know how people like the Virgin Airlines and all the rest of these big companies manage to run with the staff they have and do and run at a very small margin, providing so much service. I find the staffing is the biggest headache. And we talk to other people who are in the property business, they all say the same thing: staffing is the nightmare. And I've talked on events, and people come up to me and said, "Yeah, I used to employ 30 people, and I tell you what, it's an absolute nightmare. I'll never employ even a dog again. I'm not going to employ anyone in my life. That's it. I'm going to keep it to myself." No one talks about it. Like so many other things, just as private landlords are a major contribution to housing and how appallingly we're being treated and how wrong it all is, the same is about staffing. No one does it. And I think the problem is that, as someone said to me, there's no bad staff, just bad managers. Oh yeah, thanks very much, mate. That is really helpful. That's really supportive into what I'm doing.
No.
So that's, I was wrong to do it. I was conned. I just didn't realise that you'd have people who were just out to do it. And then people come tell you afterwards of the event, this is how it works and this is what they're doing. Well, why didn't you tell me beforehand?
Yeah.
It was written on the line that they were never intended to do what they were saying. This is a game they play, and you were a mug, and you were sucked into it. Why didn't even my solicitor spot it? Why didn't he say this is what's going on? He was just looking at, as I say, coming back with solicitors. He was thinking, oh yeah, 87 properties I'll be making a lot of money doing the transfer of this and the legals on the property. So yeah, bad story. So my life has not all been nice, but hi, I'm still here. I've still got properties, buying more, even though I sold them, which is stupid. And actually, strange enough, I'm buying a lot of them back at a fraction of what I sold them for.
Well, it comes around, you know.
It comes down.
It's an interesting part, because I remember seeing you, I think, just after you were going through that time, and it was quite a discouraging time, you know, to go through. I think it's important to talk about those times, because otherwise all people hear about is the good of property, the good side, the exciting side and all of that. But in reality is, you know, the exit can be very complex, especially when, like us, we never thinking of selling. You know, as myself, I just want to buy and hold for life. But there is a time in our lives where we do consider that, and you kind of have to wrestle through, how do I get rid of these things, especially some of the bad, you know, deals that, or they just don't turn out how you thought. I kind of think, okay, let me clean this up and make my mess clean. I think what's so frustrating, I'm sure for you, was being promised something and knowing what they're doing, and just the dishonesty about it. I think just thinking that people would treat you with respect, you know, in the industry, but unfortunately, there are a lot of sharks in the industry, and they can be brutal, you know, in that. And so just so I understand, so the ones that you sold, is the reason for the selling was it just that moment in life where you decide, let me remove some of the headache, or was it a negative cash flow at all? Because your cash flow seems amazing, you know, from what I know about it. Or were they managing some of those as well at the time, or were you still hands-on in all of the management?
I was still hands-on with the management. The cash flow has always been crap because I have so many staff and I can't manage them, if you want to put it that way. I'll give you another story another way, if you want, about staffing. I rarely make money on running the properties. The money is in the capital appreciation. Where you make money with HMOs is if you run them yourself, and it gives you a job. So you've got to work at it. If you if you think you can get agents to run it for you, people do. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's very, very difficult to get an agent to successfully manage your properties for you and give you a profit with HMOs. Single lets is a completely different story. It requires so little management. So that can work by having properties and managing them out. The only way that HMOs work, if you're going to get other people to manage it, is to hand it over to these big companies who house asylum seekers and all the rest of it. And that will work. But how long that's going to last for? When's the government going to wake up that they are? I mean, when I've handed my properties over to asylum seekers and scratched my head, they're paying me 40 quid a week per person in those days to house them. The company is getting £160. So I'm getting housing benefit rates. So I'm expected to house people, UK-born people, for 40 quid a week. Yet for asylum seekers, they're paying 4 times as much. So they're paying 4 times more to take someone in to house them who are asylum seekers and all the rest, and they're paying their own residents. That's the craziness of the housing system. Why don't they just, if they're going to house asylum seekers, why don't they just put them in the private sector and pay 40 quid for them? Why are they paying these companies all this money to house them? That is the one of the many madnesses in this business.
Do you have any idea why that is? Because I've had this discussion privately with people, and I just think, is there something we're missing, or is it purely that people don't want asylum seekers in their properties for some reason? Insurance policies, like what is the justification for paying such a big premium for something that is exactly like you say? I mean, we house social tenants from from Britain, and then we also house some asylum seekers and that. And I went to a house yesterday, and it was shocking. It was what the council are paying, but the amount of care was they'd wrecked the house completely. And I was thinking, surely there's got to be a logical reason for someone in power to do this, but I can't figure it out. Have you had any?
No, I'm totally puzzled by it as much. I'm expected to house, just take social tenants at a fraction of what the social landlords get. And what I find annoying is they'll phone me up and say, "Oh, we've got this tenant we can't house. We haven't got an accommodation for him." What they're saying is, this person is so bad, we will not house them. So we're going to dump them on you, Jim, and you'll get paid a fraction of what we get paid to house these so-called troubled, or the polite term is vulnerable tenants. This vulnerable tenant, they try and dump the real problem ones onto me. Now I ask them, well, why don't you house them yourself? And it's not because they haven't got the space. It's because they don't want to house the person. So they're trying to dump them on the private sector. And when you tell them this is what the game is, the phone goes down. That I don't really know. They have the ears of government, and they're blowing smoke up there, whatever it is. I think the government's got the problem of social housing. How do they deal with it? You've got the problem of asylum seekers. They come along and give the solution. It's just someone else's money. It's taxpayers' money, so they don't care. And that's what I'm guessing at. But they're not stupid people, these people who make these decisions. They must realise what's going on. They must have friends who are private landlords and say, look, what's going on here? Why are you paying all this money out? Why aren't you sharing it around? But it just says, I do find it. There's so much in housing that's completely irrational and insane that you wonder how the government can run a country. I do not know. When I know just one small part of it, that is housing, and see how badly it is run. It's insane.
It's crazy.
And I don't think any other government will make any difference. You think, Conservative. The Conservatives did far more damage to the private sector than Labour has. We had Tony Blair, the halcyon days of Tony Blair. He left us alone to a certain extent. It was the Conservatives who caused the real major problems. They brought in what is now the Renters' Rights Bill, well, the renters' reform, it was the renters' reform, now it's the renters' right. They came up with this idea. So, and the taxation and all these other things, conservative. I mean, where can you turn? Who sees the truth? I hope you do the podcast and bring up these political aspects for the future. So educate people that do, but they don't want to hear it. It's like
people are blinded.
I used to be an avid reader of The Guardian, and they'd phone me up for comments. And they said, "Do you mind making a comment, Jim?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't mind making a comment." Well, how about giving the reality that when I tell you, you cut out all the bits that I think are relevant, and you throw in bits that, yes, I've said it, but it's putting a very sort of jaundiced twist on what I say. I know what the editor of The Guardian said to me. My readers don't want to hear that. They want to hear that landlords are bad. So if he can twist anything I say to make it look bad and how terrible private landlords are, well, why don't you go and investigate the social landlords? It comes out. You got it with the Grenfell Tower, though I don't think you can blame the council too much for that if you look into it, but they are getting blamed for it. And then you got Aswan Law, the poor lad who died from mould. You know why that came out? It's because they thought it was a private landlord. So it hit the press and it was going round until they realised it was a social landlord. By that time, the genie was out of the bottle and the story there. But if you read the case on that, it wasn't the social landlord to blame. If you read the case, and I'd hate to say that someone as this sort of lad, poor lad died, but you can come to the conclusion very easily that the parents were trying to manipulate it to get compensation. They weren't cleaning the mould because they wanted it there so they could get compensation for it. And the kid dies. You're going to have to cut that bit out, I suppose.
No. Jim, just on the political side, I want to stick with that a bit because part of the reason I'm doing this podcast is I believe in freedom of speech. Like, it's one of the values. I think if we lose that, we're in big, big trouble. And I want to talk about anything, on this podcast. I don't want us to, the topics in society people don't touch on: politics, religion, that they're so scared on. And yet politics is affecting all of our lives, and landlords are taking a big beating in the press right now for that. So and one of the questions I had for Adam Lawrence, who's become a good friend, is if you were Prime Minister, Jim Haliburton, or you were head of housing for the UK, and you had all the power of government behind you, how would you solve this problem? What would you do to help the housing, legal framework? What would you reform, throughout the housing sector to make it more efficient and actually solve problems?
I'd be fascinated to hear what Adam has to say about this. There was a program on Radio 4 talking about the housing crisis, and they all keep away from the real issue. The problem is, if you're in government, you need to be elected and you want to be re-elected. No government has been re-elected where the price of housing has dropped. So you've got to keep property scarce because your voting public, your middle class, want to see the value of their housing go up. If it drops, you're out. So you've got a problem there. It's the same with pensions, and it's the same with a lot of other things. This crap about pensions, we've never had a pension fund or anything like that. It's a taxation. And if the government wake up to it, the pensioners are bleeding the country dry. And this is the pensioner talking. And this is the more damaging revelation thing is I could solve the housing crisis and put me and you out of a job. The Argentinians did it. They took off the controls on planning and a lot of the regulations relating to housing. And guess what happened there? The landlords went bankrupt. The supply of property just rocketed, and it became almost worthless. It's like in many other countries, the value property doesn't go up because it's so cheap just to build a new one. So you're not going to get property inflation apart from the cost of construction, which is probably going down because they've got the land. In England, only 2.5% of England is built on. All this crap about Greenbelt and all the rest of it. Do you know that more areas given over to golf courses, 3.5%? So we've created this artificial shortage. It's like De Beers and diamonds. Apparently someone said diamonds are as common as coal. I don't quite think that's true, but there's loads of diamonds about. De Beers restrict the market for diamonds and push the price up. Same goes with property. So the solution to the property business would destroy my business. HMOs are a product of shortage of housing. So if you took away the shortage of housing, I wouldn't get many tenants. I never get a tenant turn up to say, oh, this is an HMO, it's a room, oh, it's lovely, I'm going to live here for the rest of my life, this is my forever home. Some of them do, unfortunately, but that's because they can't get anything better, but they all want a house or a flat. So we are all the beneficiaries of this inefficient government. So the more crap they put on landlords, I'm rubbing hands. The Renters' Rights Bill, fantastic, because it's causing lots of landlords to go. It's only people like you and I who say, hang on, property's still good, that other people come into it, or they can't see any other way of making money for themselves, that property is good, but it's getting much, much more harder. And the harder they hit property, the real stranglehold is planners. If you want to deal with housing, just get rid of planning or restrict it. They did try and restrict it. So you brought in this commercial to residential. That's how I was able to turn the 13-story high-rise blocks into residential, because you're allowed to turn offices into residential on a permitted development. It's very simple. If you needed planning, you'd be tied up for years. It'd cost you a fortune to do it, and you'd probably get no, especially if they thought you're going to do HMOs. They don't want that. So your problem is, you could solve it. If I was in charge of housing, I'd destroy my own business and a lot of landlords' business. I mean, there's plenty of land there. I mean, they're going, oh, we can't do that. After the Second World War, they built prefabs by the thousands. Oh, we can't do that today. You can. Look what happened in COVID with the Nightingale hospitals. Turn those people around and get them instructing accommodation. You could do it very simply. You've got plenty of land. It's a planning issue. And then you've got people talking about, we haven't got the resources or the infrastructure. We haven't got the sewage system. We're not bringing anyone else into the country. People are still doing their bodily functions. They're doing it somewhere else. You build more houses. They're doing it, just moving it to somewhere else.
Yeah.
They're still in school. So you're just moving schools from one place to another. It's complete nonsense. And the problem is, it's political. The general public don't want it. This is what they're doing. The government know that tenants' don't need these rights. They're all over-regulated. They've got plenty of protection as it is. It's just nice to say we'll blame landlords. We're being blamed for the inefficiencies of the social sector and the government's provision of housing. They will never provide more housing. This promise that they're going to build all these houses, it's not. It is a promise that will never be achieved. Why? Because it'll be the death knell. If they could provide all these hundreds of thousands of properties, that would bring down the price of property. And they don't. We want the price of property to go up because that's how you get re-elected. So until you get the people educated and say, look, if you want to solve the housing crisis, you as a middle-class person have got to accept your house is no longer the nest egg you thought it was. And that's a hard story for people to accept. And they won't accept it.
That's the thing that fascinates me, though, is because I'm currently reading Rory Stewart's book, and one of the politicians from Conservatives. And what's really surprised me in reading it is how little people in government know about the sector they put in charge of as a minister or whatever. So he said he was put in as an environmental sector, then he gets put in international development and aid. And he's like, I don't know anything about Africa, and I've just been assigned the whole of Africa to distribute, I think it was 33 billion pounds. And it just really blew my mind. For the first time I realized, I was like, we need people that know what they're doing in a sector. Like, I wouldn't claim to know what to do for the NHS. I mean, there's some ideas that I could have, but I know that the person that's going to solve that problem is probably working, has worked in the industry for years and years, and they know what to do. But the popularity thing is costing us our future. And I think that's what really worries me is people are looking at the next election, the next cycle, and not doing the unpopular thing. And like you say, even if our businesses got ruined, I think actually solving something for the country and the nation would be so much better for all of us. Because I think it was Jeremy Hunt was saying that 25% of the adult working age population is currently on full-time benefits. And I thought that's not sustainable. That's got to change. And we see it in, I don't know if you found it, but from our tenant base, is sometimes the most demanding tenants are the ones that are fully paid for by the state. And the working, single mom that's getting a bit of support, but she's working full time is not, and they're working their asses off trying to make a living for them and their kids. And I really respect that, because some of them had said to me, I've been told I should just stay at home, but I want to contribute to society. So I'd vote for you, Jim, if you went for it. So do you think Nigel can solve the problem with his Reform Party in the next election, or can't you see it?
It's a fantasy dream that they'll be able to do anything. Unfortunately, I know quite a lot of people. It's not a party. It's just Nigel Farage, dictatorship. I mean, he's a very able person, but look, it just falls out with everyone. I don't even get to the next election. But no, unfortunately, he's not going to be the answer. I don't know what the answer is. It's a complete, utter mess that we have here. But as I said, democracy is the best of the worst. It's not perfect. No, I mean, the problem is, not a problem, what I find interesting is when I talk to people from other countries, like people came out from Eastern Europe, our perception of what goes on in other countries is completely different. And had the privilege of talking to a Chinese lady, and I was going on about the human rights and God knows what else. And the reaction was, they're troublemakers. They should be executed publicly. What? You serious?
Yeah.
No, our country is great. It's wonderful. Well, if you look at what the Chinese have done, I mean, they've reformed from a primitive society virtually overnight. They've achieved an awful lot. They've brought people into prosperity and wealth. So there's something not quite right on our reporting. In fact, we talk about the BBC giving independent, it's completely slanted. And there's very little that's an impartiality. I've given up listening to the news. I do listen to it when I'm having a shower, because I can't do anything else. And I thought, well, I might as well try and keep abreast. It's a long thing to give up with, but no. As I said, the housing crisis is benefiting me. You accept it. I accept it. It's a complete fraud. Only wish I got into social housing. That's where the big money is. And it's a bigger fraud. They're just paying people a lot more. And I don't begrudge the people sitting there doing nothing, because I think we should actually scrap the whole benefit system and replace it with a guaranteed income for everyone, which applies in every other country. So we don't need a benefit system. Everyone gets 20 grand a year, whether they work or not. And then what you do above that, but you're going to do away with a lot of people's jobs, a lot of people's perceptions. But a lot of the great things that we held as sacred before. When I was a lad, I had a girlfriend staying with me. She was unemployed. She couldn't get unemployment benefit. Why? Because she was living with me. I was a student at the time, and I couldn't afford to keep her. But because this whole idea, if you live together, you've got to treat it as man and wife, otherwise our structure would collapse. Now it's different. So you've got, in fact, it's gone the other way. The only reason a lot of social landlords are able to get tenants for their properties, because they're so bad, is what's called postal addresses. They're really living with girlfriends who's claiming to be a single mother and getting a lot more money while renting a council property where the council can't rent them out. So that's just another massive fraud that's going on. Yet I knew that was going on. At a time, the council decided to do an investigation to all these benefit claimants. And they're going to start with, guess what? Private landlords who ran HMOs, because that's the biggest fraud. And I said, no, it's not. Go and have a look at your blocks. I live next to 2 blocks of flats where you got. There's probably only 10% of the lights are on at any one time in that building. And yet it's supposed to be fully occupied. Where are the people going? You just look at the lights at night to know that 90% of it's empty. Oh, no. We're coming around. We're going to deal with you. And then they stopped when it came to checking their own properties for what they call postal addresses. I mean, it's just a massive fraud going on. Fraud, which you can say is criminal, and that's which is being covered up and not being enforced against. But yeah, what's the answer? Don't. And as for the politician, I mean, that's very simple. He's got the civil servants, and the rest are people very wise, and he just has to be able to listen and discriminate the crap from the truth. So it wouldn't be too hard to take over these departments because you've got the support to advise you on how to run it. But yes, they don't. And dealing with difficult things that are going to put you out of, you don't want to bring in someone who's in charge of housing and say, yeah, this is the answer. We've got to deregulate. They don't want to deregulate. You can see they're pulling back. You're now taking away the permitted development rights under planning. They're making it much more difficult because they feel there's just too much expansion of housing and it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think that the scary part for, the small guy that trying to just get their business up and running and, with these big policy decisions that are above their heads, is we just have to play the game within the field that we play in and make the best, from the cards that have been dealt to us. But I know, just back to that thing of the, the news cycle, the BBC, and this is why I think this long form conversation, I believe, is the future of communication with, the public, because ultimately, my barber yesterday, I was sitting in this chair and 2 people had talked to me about Iran and what the country is like in Iran. And it was totally different to anything I'd been told from the news cycles. And I said to myself, my plumber told me he was in Iran on holiday. Brilliant, beautiful, country, wants a new government in place. This barber said exactly the same. He said, all of us, we're actually not that religious, my generation and where we're at. But what these guys are doing is corruption. And that, I said, what do you think of Donald Trump? And he is super pro. Donald Trump's amazing. He's the only one who's doing anything. And a lot of us agree and believe the same thing. And what I just realized in that moment, I was like, we can't just trust the news cycle that's been given to us, and it's controlling us, keeping us stuck in it. And a lot of people, when it comes to property and that, I say, listen to a 2-hour interview with me and you, and you're going to learn something, hopefully, that helps you move forward in your life. Listening to the BBC for 2 hours, you are only going to come out with more fear and inaction, because you're just going to be watching big events that you can't control and then feeling depressed about your life in that. And so I think it's so needed. And I'm actually trying to get a debate set up at some point with different housing sector people and some of the political parties, and we can get someone like yourself in the room and we can actually start having a long form conversation around these things, because if we don't fix, there are solutions. It's just getting people around a table. But Jim, I'm just aware of the time and that, but is one thing I just wanted to ask you is, what would you say now in this point of your journey is your greatest fear when it comes to life or business? What's the thing that keeps popping up that you think, I'm afraid to do that?
Afraid to do, or I've got fear. I've got lots of fears. Lots
fear,
of worries.
yeah.
I'm not afraid to do. I suppose I'm getting a lot more nervous over housing standards, having seen too many of my friends and people I've got to know, because I hold myself out to talk to other landlords and give them help and support if they need that, where you've got the council just going in and slapping horrendous fines on people called civil penalties, which they can do up to 40 grand. It's now being increased under the Renters' Rights Act, where they just come in and say, you've got these faults, usually created by the tenants themselves, and somehow you're to blame, and you end up with a 20, 30 or 40 grand fine, which you can fight. I mean, there's an appeal system and all the rest of it, but there's no warning. Just do this. You fail to license something. A license, I deal across 6 local authorities. It's very hard to keep track of what's licensable and what's not. People think it's simple. It's not, as people do. And you have situations. So I'm now licensing properties which I don't think need to be licensed because it's cheaper than trying to prove that they don't have to be licensed and just put an application.
Yeah.
That's a big worry for me. So I'm going to have to spend a lot more time checking properties for purposes, knowing full well that we have door closers put on the doors to stop them, to make sure they close, which means they tend to slam shut. And tenants don't like it, so they just rip it off. That's really caveman approach to have it. So we're going round and having changing the fire doors. Some properties, as soon as you fix the fire door, they break it. First time in my life, I used to say fit a fire door because if a tenant tries to headbutt it, they won't try it again. Ordinary doors get smashed.
Yeah.
First time I'd ever seen a fire door being headbutted and actually gone through the fire door. So we have to change this door. The poor lad's got mental issues, very angry and stressed. Can't blame him. He just sits in a bedsit all day doing nothing. To me, if I was to advise him, but he wouldn't do this, I said, well, you don't want to sit in the bedside, go out and do some work. There's plenty of voluntary work you can do. You go to any business person and say, look, I'll come and work for you for a month for free just to show I can work and have a product. And if at the end of the period you think I'm no good or put a stop to me, I'll do that. You'll have a job at the end of the month. You don't even have to do it for a month. You can do it for a week or 2. That's how you can get a job. Having no experience and done nothing before it, there's no way you're going to get a job. No one's going to come and give you 20 grand a year. But if you prove yourself, you'll be able to do this. Work for nothing, so you don't have to work tomorrow. In that case, you would have to work tomorrow, but go into property, but that wouldn't appeal to him. He just couldn't get his head around that. Yeah. There's no point even trying. As usual, I'm rambling on. I've forgotten what the point of the story was.
No, just fear.
The fear I have is I'm being over-regulated. The tax man's getting very aggressive. They're out to just screw you. And it's enormous administration to deal with. I've got, there's not a week goes by where you don't have someone coming around demanding, a bailiff coming around demanding for payment for something we've probably not even heard of. Particularly councils do the same, local and utility companies. They don't bill you. The next thing you've got is a bailiff. I'm going to take your stuff away unless you pay this bill for 3,000 quid. Well, what is the bill for? Where is the problem? I don't know. It's a bill. You've got to pay it. I'm a bailiff. You've got to pay this. And because the magistrate's court, this is council tax, says you've got to pay it. And you have a hard job trying to persuade them not to. Some of them, most of them are okay, but you get some right little bastards working for these people. So you got that going on. That's more an irritation. That's just more as a mosquito bite over the scheme of things. But I can't see it being a business, and I can understand my children not wanting to get into this business because of the hear from me. So the fear, and then you got the pearly gates. Is St. Peter going to allow you in? Have you done a life thing? So have you got things in order? How long are you going to last? Without health, you got nothing.
Absolutely.
So you and we're all going to die. So and someone said to me, Jim, I don't know why you keep buying properties for the future. You've got no future. Oh, thanks very much, mate. But I could take his point. I mean, no one knows how long they're going to live. So you have an issue of that. So there is concern.
Do you fear death?
Not particularly. Probably, if you don't know it's coming, you're okay. So it's not a fear of death that I have. It's more, I don't want to have a lingering death and be a burden, end up with dementia or something like that. That would be pretty terrible. But a quick death would be nice.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
that would, no suffering.
mm. And what do you believe? I mean, just on that line, you said earlier about in that particular deal, it felt like someone out there helping you
Mm.
out. Do you have a faith in God?
Oh, yeah.
Who do you think God is?
Um, slight difficulty with that. I was brought up in the Christian religion, so the Christian God, but I've got a lot of Muslim friends, and they say Allah is better.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not quite sure on that one. So I wouldn't say I'm a sort of a dedicated. I don't go around boasting. I have a Christian faith or believe in Christ, but that is there. That probably keeps me from sort of taking a little bit of vengeance of people. Keeps me on the civilized side of things because I don't want to explain to St. Peter why I decided to distribute a bit of early justice to people. I'll just let the strange thing about that one is where people have done you wrong is how often you see they've come unstuck. I think can't remember the art of war. If you stand by the river long enough, the bodies of your enemies float by. Apparently they say he didn't say that, but whatever way you look at it, leave someone else to deal with the vengeance and the stupidity that you have to put up with. Let it go and let them sort them out themselves. Yeah.
It's an interesting one because I always think the two areas that I was thinking about the unique side of how we're doing this pod is talking about the different areas that people don't want to talk about or we've just been told we can't talk about. And I think, well, actually, everyone's entitled to, their view and, what they believe.
Mm.
But I find there's a saying that I've never seen a moving van following a hearse, meaning your possessions and everything that you have
Right.
on this earth,
It's gone.
And I think, especially in our business, I think it's a big question people are wrestling with now. And it's interesting hearing your thoughts. But Jim, I mean, is there anything else you want to cover? Or I mean, we've had a good long chat here, but is there anything else final thoughts?
I think it would probably come back to if you want to get into property, I'm probably one of the few people who say you can come and work and learn the business and I don't charge you for it. So if you want to, there's lots of people who got courses and all the rest of it, which give you the theory sometimes or the fantasy of property. But if you want the reality, you can come and work in my business because I'm running a business, I'm doing property and see what it's like. And the strange thing is I used to get quite a lot of people come and work in the business and it's suddenly stopped. I find that quite strange. I don't know why. But at the time I'd have half a dozen people all want to learn about property, working in the business. So if you do, I still think it's one of the best ways of making money for yourself. As opposed to things less complicated, like I've got people getting out of property, going into share dealing and making more money than I do in property, which is amazing. But it's luck. But it's really gambling what they're doing. But what value are they providing for society? At least I provide housing. I can say, hand on heart, I look after my tenants. I provide a 24-hour service where they need to. As I say, I've got a no eviction policy. I've got the highest standard of service that I give to my tenants. They don't appreciate it. You still got them moaning. My staff moan about having to provide a service for tenants. But I'm proud for what I do. And I do it, I think, very well, outperforming probably most local authorities in the service I provide at a fraction of the cost that they would do. So I throw that little point in. There's loads of other things I've got. I'm surprised just how far we've gone into the depth. I've never had someone talk about the politics of property to me ever again, or even ask about my religious beliefs. But
Mm.
thank you very much, and thank you very much for the scotch. It's rather good.
No, pleasure, Jim. Thank you. And I think that, I'd love to do a part 2 with you because, like I say, I'm just so blessed to have you in my life as a mentor, someone who's helped me along the journey. And I was thinking about just before we start, when I was driving to fetch you, I thought, you've made me over £1 million in equity. It just part of, that thought hit me. I thought, wow. And every time we've had dinner, the drives that we've had, it really impacted my journey. And so my 3 kids, my wife, are all blessed because of you. All of this is possible, because of a lot of your work. And you gave me a bunch of your books as well. I don't know if people can buy those still.
Yeah, it's still available. Yeah,
Are still available.
Yeah, so do that.
Amazon or
no, just HMODaddy.com.
yeah.
Jim at HMO Daddy. I took it off. I've got to put them back on to publishers. But yeah, it's all there. It's written out. The best way to learn is to read the books by the people who know what they're doing with this. I'm very disappointed. I only made you £1 million. You should have done far better. You're a bit of disappointment there, mate.
Yeah. It's actually more, but I just thought I didn't want to give away too much. But the deal that changed my life from your advice. And I remember we sat in Smashburger up where you are, with the closest one to where you were. And I was in the middle of this deal, and I came up, for the Saturday training, and we sat there, and I said, Jim, it can't be this easy. It didn't make sense to me. I thought, I don't need planning permission. I'm using PD rights. And I sat there, and the cash flow from that deal was more than a salary, than I could live off. And just the first 3 deals I did, following that commercial to Resi stuff, was enough for me and my family to live on now. I thought anything else is a bonus, but it is that life-changing. And so anyone that is thinking about going up and spending time with you, I really encourage him in that, because I've seen some people that have done that. It's intense. They've seen the full reality of an HMO business. But Jim, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope we have a good evening tonight, but I look forward to having you on again. And we'll point people your way on the socials and that. And really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure. I love talking about it. And thank you for being so honest, as I've acknowledged. I helped you in your life. Very few people will do such a thing like that. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.